They told us they want to try again in a different area of the Indian Ocean.
This was the first definitive proof that the plane had indeed gone down in the Indian Ocean.
For 11 years, MH370 has been more than a missing airplane. It has been a question the world simply could not answer. How can a modern passenger jet carrying 239 people vanish over one of the most heavily watched regions on Earth? Families have spent more than a decade waiting for answers. Investigators have followed countless theories, and despite enormous search efforts, the aircraft's final resting place has remained a mystery. As one devastated relative said, "3 generations of my family. This is the extinction of my whole family." But now, something has emerged from the darkness. An underwater drone has entered a remote section of the ocean connected to the MH370 search, and researchers say what appeared in the data could change the way we look at this case. Before we reveal what the drone discovered, hit like and subscribe, because what comes next may completely change the mystery. For years, investigators have wondered what happened during MH370's final moments. Now, new evidence has reopened those questions. Is this finally a clue pointing toward the missing aircraft? Or could it lead investigators toward an entirely different explanation? Today, we're diving beneath the surface and examining the evidence, the discovery, and what it could really mean for the search for MH370. The first glimpse beneath the silence. In early 2025, Ocean Infinity's newest fleet pushed into the Seahorse Zone, a lonely, almost mythic stretch of ocean, where many experts believe the final answer to the MH370 mystery had been hiding for years. Their flagship, the Armada 7806, drifted over waters so deep they seemed endless. More than 6,000 meters below, there was only darkness, pressure strong enough to crush steel, and a silence untouched for eons. Into that crushing quiet, engineers released a set of advanced autonomous underwater vehicles, machines built to survive exactly where humans couldn't. Each drone slipped downward at a steady pace, entering a world of ridges, cliffs, and valleys carved by millions of years of tectonic activity. For hours, the sonar showed nothing but grainy seabed sediment. Then something changed. One AUV caught a reflection that didn't match any natural formation. Analysts crowded around the monitors as the sonar image sharpened into a long, flat shape, nearly 30 meters long, half buried in the seafloor. A second sweep confirmed it, smooth, metallic, and unmistakably aligned with the dimensions of a commercial aircraft wing. The coordinates matched the WSPR, derived flight path perfectly. Excitement flashed through the control room, but everyone knew how dangerous false hope could be. They'd chased illusions before, rocks that looked like engines, shadows that mimicked debris. To be sure, they deployed a drone with high-resolution imaging. Its synthetic aperture sonar revealed details no rock could imitate: ribbed internal structures, torn metal edges, twisted panels frozen in time. Within a 15-kilometer radius, the drones spotted 2 more anomalies, one resembling a fuselage segment, the other a tail assembly. The findings were classified instantly, and verification protocols kicked in. If real, it meant the first identifiable wreckage from MH370 had been lying in a place no previous mission had ever reached. But before this new evidence, what was initially found that brought hope to the mystery? Keep watching to find out. When the ocean first spoke. For 16 long months, the Indian Ocean held its silence. Then, on a quiet morning in July 2015, A man walking along the eastern shore of Reunion Island noticed a strange object tangled in seaweed, curved, nearly 2 meters long, coated in barnacles, its edges torn and softened by months adrift. Locals assumed it belonged to a fishing boat until aviation experts arrived. Within hours, the world heard a sentence many had stopped believing they'd ever hear again. The debris was a flaperon from a Boeing 777, and only one aircraft of that type was missing. Engineers examined the flaperon closely, studying how the hinges had snapped and how the metal showed fatigue marks consistent with a violent, high-speed impact with water. Nothing suggested a mid-air explosion. The shape and damage pointed toward a controlled but catastrophic descent. That one fragment shifted the search from theory to physical evidence. In Malaysia, the news spread with the force of a lightning strike. Families cried through press conferences, their grief reopened, yet sharpened, with new clarity. Officials confirmed the find with solemn calm. The flaperon was flown to France, where the BEA, the French Air Accident Investigation Agency, launched a forensic study. Technicians inspected every rivet and serial marking, tracing each one back to the aircraft's original manufacturing records. The conclusion was undeniable. The fragment belonged to MH370. Oceanographers then built simulations of Indian Ocean currents, modeling how winds, tides, and gyres could have carried the debris nearly 4,000 kilometers from a possible crash site to Reunion. It wasn't random drift. It was a path shaped by the ocean's restless motion. Soon, more pieces emerged. A section of the horizontal stabilizer in Mozambique, a piece of cabin interior in Madagascar, and an engine cowling fragment in Tanzania. Each bore its own pattern of tears, bends, and salt scoring. A fragile breadcrumb trail scattered across half an ocean. Scientists from several countries ran thousands of simulations, adjusting for wind speed, sea temperature, and the Coriolis effect. The paths pointed to the same place, a narrow corridor southwest of Australia near the Seventh Arc, a landscape of underwater mountains and trenches plunging more than 5,000 meters into darkness. For investigators, this was both a breakthrough and a torment. The fragments proved the aircraft had met its fate, but they didn't reveal where the main wreckage rested. It was like finding ashes without knowing where the fire had burned. Still, the discoveries reignited pressure from the world. Private companies began offering new solutions: autonomous underwater vehicles capable of roaming the seafloor for days without guidance. The only realistic way to search terrain too rugged for traditional sonar. Governments hesitated over the enormous cost and slim odds, but one determined company would eventually take the risk. By the end of 2017, the ocean had given fragments, but not answers. As global patience thinned, a quiet alliance between advanced technology and relentless science was forming, one that would soon reshape the search forever. As the deep revealed secrets, how did machines brave its depths? Stay tuned to find out. The machines that challenged the deep. For 3 relentless years, the Indian Ocean defeated every effort to uncover MH370's fate. Ships crossed millions of square kilometers, returning each time with nothing but static and shadows. In 2018, everything changed. The search entered an era led not by human endurance, but by machines built to survive where no person could. Ocean Infinity, a private Texas-based company, believed it could succeed where entire nations had failed. They arrived with something the world had never seen on this scale: a fleet of autonomous underwater vehicles, sleek, torpedo-shaped robots capable of slipping into the abyss with silent precision. Unlike older systems that had to be towed slowly behind ships, these AUVs roamed freely, guided by sophisticated onboard computers, carrying multibeam sonar, high-resolution imaging tools, and three-dimensional mapping systems capable of diving nearly 6,000 meters down into a world where sunlight is only a memory. At the heart of the operation was the seabed constructor, a ship built almost like a floating space station for the deep sea. From its open deck, engineers released the AUVs one after another into the freezing waters of the southern Indian Ocean. Ocean Infinity's deal with Malaysia was as bold as its technology, a no-find, no-fee mission. They would only be paid if they discovered the wreckage. It was a gamble, a test of both nerve and innovation. Each dive began with engineers programming coordinates into a drone's navigation system. The moment it submerged, the robot disappeared into the dark, sweeping the seabed in perfect grids. Every ping of the sonar painted a digital picture of the ocean floor. Its trenches, cliffs, and plains, landscapes no human had ever laid eyes on. Data streamed back to the seabed constructor, where analysts worked through the nights, studying shapes and shadows that might finally reveal MH370. For weeks, the crew battled savage seas and unpredictable weather. The Indian Ocean is one of the planet's harshest environments, with strong currents, towering underwater ridges, and storms that could turn the mission sideways in minutes. Yet, despite everything, Ocean Infinity's robotic fleet managed to search an astonishing 112,000 square kilometers, nearly matching all previous government searches combined. What they found was haunting. Miles of silt-covered plains, broken by deep fissures, occasional metallic shapes that turned out to be rock formations. The 2018 mission ended without a breakthrough, but it marked a turning point. For the first time, humanity had mapped parts of the deep ocean in detail once thought impossible. Ocean Infinity didn't stop. Their AUVs grew smarter, using artificial intelligence to refine search patterns. By 2024, the leap had materialized in the Armada 7806, a vessel that coordinated multiple AUVs remotely via satellite links and machine learning, operating like a digital hive mind. This was evolution, not just exploration. The Armada's upgraded AUVs carried sub-bottom profilers able to scan beneath the seafloor, and side-scan sonar sharp enough to distinguish aircraft debris from coral. With this fleet ready, scientists refined new models pointing toward a deeper, rougher region than ever searched before, a section of seafloor near a trench known as the Seahorse Zone, a place no previous mission had reached. 11 years after MH370 vanished, technology stood on the brink of uncovering the truth. But let's go back to the beginning. What happened to flight MH370? Let's find out. The night the world lost, Flight 37. The flight began like any other long-haul red-eye leaving Kuala Lumpur. It was the early hours of March 8, 2014, and the Boeing 777 was scheduled for its routine journey to Beijing. On board were 2 experienced pilots, 10 cabin crew, 227 passengers from multiple countries, and more than 14,000 kilograms of cargo. The aircraft lifted off from runway 32R at 12:42 a.m., climbing toward its first waypoint, IGARI, off the coast in the Gulf of Thailand. Communications were normal. At 12:46, it was cleared to climb to 35,000 feet, reaching that altitude just after 1 a.m. The final automated ACARS message at 1:06 a.m. reported a healthy fuel load of 43,800 kilograms. At 1:19 a.m., as Kuala Lumpur radar handed the aircraft to Vietnamese control, came the last words ever heard from the cockpit. "Good night, Malaysian 370. The crew never checked in with Ho Chi Minh City. When Vietnamese controllers tried contacting the plane, there was no reply. At 1:21, as MH370 crossed IGARI, its transponder stopped transmitting and it vanished from civilian radar, but it wasn't gone yet. Malaysia's military radar caught the plane turning sharply right, then sweeping into a long left arc back across the Malaysian peninsula, over the Strait of Malacca, south of Penang, then northwest along established air routes between 29,000 and 35,000 feet. By 2:22 a.m., it reached the edge of Malaysian radar coverage and vanished into darkness for good. From then on, only satellite data would suggest where it had gone. Thailand, Indonesia, and Vietnam all detected pieces of the early flight path, but political sensitivities slowed the release of information. Even Australia's powerful Dawn radar system had been offline that night. In under an hour, MH370 had slipped through some of the most heavily monitored airspace in Asia, setting off one of the largest and most expensive searches in history, one that would stretch across continents, oceans, and more than a decade. After the plane vanished, what silent signals hinted at the truth? Keep watching to find out. The silent signals that shouldn't have been there. After the final ACARS transmission at 1:06, the aircraft's satellite communication system suddenly went offline. Whether from a power interruption or something more deliberate, no one could say. It stayed silent through the plane's mysterious turn away from its route. At 2:25, above the Andaman Sea, the satellite link suddenly rebooted and sent a log-on request, the first sign of life since everything went quiet. Inmarsat detected it immediately. For the next 6 hours, MH370 continued to handshake with the satellite, answering hourly status pings like a ghost drifting across the sky. 2 ground-to-aircraft calls at 2:39 and 7:13 rang unanswered. The last routine exchange came at 8:10. Then, at 8:19, the aircraft sent a fresh log-on request, as if rebooting again. The ground station acknowledged it at 8:19:37, and then silence. A final ping at 9:15 went unanswered. Those signals led investigators to one conclusion. The plane had likely flown until its fuel ran dry somewhere deep in the southern Indian Ocean. The story on the ground was far messier. Confusion swept through air traffic control centers from Kuala Lumpur to Ho Chi Minh City. Radar reports conflicted, and operators insisted the aircraft was in Cambodian airspace, even though Cambodian controllers had no contact with it at all. Malaysia Airlines' operations center, relying on outdated data projections, kept reassuring controllers that MH370 was fine. By the time Kuala Lumpur activated its rescue center at 5:30, more than 4 hours had passed since the plane vanished from primary radar. Malaysia Airlines didn't issue a public statement until 7:24, claiming they had lost contact at 2:40, ironically, while MH370 was still flying over the Indian Ocean. Search crews were deployed to the wrong sea, scanning the South China Sea, while the aircraft continued its silent journey far to the west and south. When Prime Minister Najib Razak addressed the world on March 24th, he delivered the news families had dreaded. MH370's last known position was in the southern Indian Ocean. No landing sites, no survivors. Months later, officials formally declared the incident an accident, presuming all 239 aboard dead. Sightings flooded the media afterward. Low-flying jets, burning objects, aircraft roaring overhead. But none were ever confirmed. And now, with Ocean Infinity uncovering what may be the first true pieces of wreckage, those unexplained signals are being examined with fresh urgency. Amid mysterious signals, what secrets hide behind the cockpit door? Let's find out. The human puzzle. Behind the cockpit door. As search teams mapped the possible crash zone and analysts struggled to interpret the aircraft's final satellite handshakes, investigators on the ground turned their attention to the people aboard MH370, especially those with access to the controls. Malaysian police began with the cockpit, searching the homes of both pilots and reviewing their personal histories, financial activity, digital devices, and hours of CCTV footage. According to the preliminary report released in March 2015, there were no unusual transactions, no sudden large withdrawals, no behavior suggesting stress or radicalization. On camera, the pilots moved calmly and naturally, showing none of the emotional volatility sometimes associated with premeditated acts. Despite this, a growing number of investigators, particularly in the United States, argued human intervention remained the most likely explanation, since someone had deliberately reprogrammed the autopilot to redirect the plane into the Indian Ocean. Media reports claimed Malaysian police had privately identified Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah as the prime suspect, a view later echoed by former Australian Prime Minister Tony Abbott, who revealed in a 2020 documentary that senior Malaysian officials had believed almost from the start that the disappearance was an act of self-harm by the captain. Malaysian authorities denied withholding anything. In 2016, a confidential document revealed the FBI had found a simulated flight path on Zahari's home flight simulator that eerily matched the theorized route into the Indian Ocean. The ATSB and the Malaysian government both confirmed the discovery. While officials called it nothing sinister, engineers Jean-Luc Marchand and Patrick Blely argued the pilot's self-harm theory best matched the technical evidence. What investigators could confirm? The satellite communication system functioned normally until its last HR's message at 1:07, after which power to the unit was interrupted, either manually switched off or deliberately cut. Malaysia's Prime Minister stated outright that the transponder and data systems were deliberately disabled. Then, at 2:25, the unit rebooted just as the aircraft made its ghostly arc south. Investigators cleared every passenger. 2 Iranian passengers who'd boarded using stolen passports sparked alarm, but Interpol confirmed they were asylum seekers, not terrorists. China, with the largest number of citizens aboard, ruled out sabotage or terrorism. Attention also turned to the cargo, over 10,000 kilograms, including mangosteen, and 2,400 kilograms of lithium-ion batteries, a known fire hazard, though investigators found no evidence of mishandling. Meanwhile, aviation experts continued debating what happened during the aircraft's final hours. An in-flight upset, a glide event, and a hypoxia scenario were all examined by the ATSB. Their conclusion was clear. An unresponsive crew or hypoxia event best matched the evidence, explaining how the plane continued on a steady course for 5 hours with no communication and no significant deviations, likely operating on autopilot until fuel starvation. The recovered flaperon later revealed that the landing flaps were not extended, contradicting theories of a controlled ditching. This supported the idea that MH370 entered a high-speed spiral dive after the engines flamed out and the autopilot disengaged. In 2018, the ATSB reaffirmed this view, noting that if the plane was under human control at the end, that control was not very successful. No single theory commands universal agreement, and with possible wreckage emerging near the Seahorse Zone, the debate around human involvement is gathering momentum once again. Beyond the cockpit, how did MH370 capture the world's imagination? Keep watching to find out. A mystery captured worldwide, MH370 has become one of the biggest mysteries in modern aviation, inspiring countless documentaries, books, and shows. On April 6, 2014, the Smithsonian Channel aired Malaysia 370, the plane that vanished. 10 days later, Discovery Channel broadcast Flight 370, the missing links. BBC Two's Horizon episode, Where is Flight MH370, aired June 17, 2014, examining the disappearance and technologies that might prevent such incidents in the future, including flight recorder streaming and ADS-B tracking. It highlighted Ocean Shield, which had spent 2 months scanning 850 kilometers of ocean. Far north of the hotspot in Marsat data had predicted near 28 degrees south. In 2023, American comedian Jocelyn Chia faced an investigation by Malaysian authorities after joking about MH370 during a stand-up set in New York. Police sought Interpol's help to identify her. MH370 has left an indelible mark on global consciousness, not just as a story of loss, but as a puzzle, a cautionary tale, and a cultural touchstone that continues to fascinate and horrify. As the mystery spread worldwide, could the resumption of the search finally uncover answers? Stay tuned to find out. The search begins again. After 11 long years of uncertainty, Malaysia announced the search for MH370 would resume on December 30th, giving new hope to families who had waited more than a decade. The decision marked the start of a fresh 55-day mission, one that had actually begun months earlier in March, but was paused when violent weather made the waters too dangerous. Malaysian officials said the renewed effort showed the country's commitment to bringing closure to the loved ones of all 239 people who vanished that night in 2014. Once again, the mission would be led by Ocean Infinity under its bold, no-find, no-fee approach, paid up to $70 million only if it finally located the wreckage. Earlier searches had already pushed human and technological limits. 60 ships, 50 aircraft, and 26 countries formed the largest search operation in aviation history before it was called off in 2017. Ocean Infinity returned in 2018 with its first generation of AUVs, mapping a stretch of seabed larger than anything previously attempted. Yet that mission too ended in silence. Now, with stronger machines, sharper sonar, and new predictions pointing to an unexplored trench, the company is trying again. After 11 years of theories, dead ends, and heartbreak, the world is watching closely, because this time, the machines diving into the dark may finally surface with the truth. After 11 years, MH370 remains a mystery that has never truly gone away. Every new clue brings hope, but also reminds us of the families who are still waiting for answers. The underwater drone may not have solved the mystery, but what it revealed has given researchers another reason to keep looking. Could this evidence eventually help locate the missing aircraft, or will MH370 remain hidden beneath thousands of feet of ocean? For now, the search continues, and the deep still holds its secrets. What do you think happened to MH370? Do you believe the aircraft will finally be found? Share your theory in the comments. And if you want to follow the next breakthrough, hit like, subscribe, and stay with us.